All right, good evening. Didn't delayed, over delayed, but we're here. The plan is, as I mentioned before, uh, so today's Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday for Chazara, which we'll get as far as we get. It's obviously going to covering the first Simanim more, which I think are the more important Simanim, as I mentioned. It's more practical stuff to begin with. Later, Simanim, the smaller ones, are somewhat less relevant, practically speaking, and therefore going to be less featured in the test as well, as you saw if you went through the test. That's one, and then after that, the Sunday afterwards, we'll go straight to Malicha. Malicha itself is only, I think, scheduled to begin with for 2 or maybe 3 weeks. I didn't look at the syllabus. The test I saw, it's going to be easy. It's going to be a breeze. So this test you're doing now is going to be your test. This is the big one, the last two, and this is the really big one, and then Malicha is going to be fairly simple. So that is the plan. With our overall Chazarah, as we did last time, we're going to read and translate the Shulchan Aruch Ramah, and if you remember some comments that are necessary and relevant, you're welcome to say them, but we're going to move through as much as we can, because really the idea of these Chazarah is just to refresh us, remind us where we are, to bring the ideas back into our head, so they're not so foreign to us, because we learned them weeks ago or months ago, we haven't thought about them in a while. So we're going to try to cover as much ground as we can, because it's a total of 3 hours. Today an hour, Sunday, and then Wednesday. We'll try to cover as much as we can in these 3 hours. So let's begin with Tzadik Ches. Again, we read and translate. Iser shenes arav beheter, something which is forbidden that has been mixed together with something which is kosher, min b'she'enei minoi, and there are two different types. And the flavor is not the same, and there are two different types of food. Going, for example, chelev, non-kosher fat, this arav babasa, which is mixed with meat. Meat tastes one way, fat tastes another, and they mix together. And the question is, do we have tam ki'ikr? Do we have the flavor of the fat in that meat? Because that's what's going to determine whether or not the meat's kosher or not. So therefore, says the Shulchan Aruch, goy, let a non-Jew taste it. The im, and if the non-Jew says, im oimer, if the non-Jew says, she'ein tam chelev, he does not taste any fat, or he says, she'esh tam, that there is flavor of the non-kosher fat, chelev, elashu pogam, but the flavor has been ruined, it's detrimental, then mutter, it's totally kosher. There's no more tam ki ikr, because either the flavor is gone or the flavor is unfaithful to the original because it's pogam, and therefore the food is going to be kosher. But who? And this is the condition that says the Shulchan Aruch, that if at the moment the flavor is detrimental, but with time the chelav will give a positive flavor, then it's not kosher. Now, here's the condition in order for us to believe in non-Jew. It has the goy has to be what's called mesiach lefi tumoi, which means he is speaking innocently and casually, and not that we are coming to him and he says, "Can I eat this? In order for me to eat this, I have to know if it's the flavor is there or not," because then he knows we want him to say something. He has to be just casually speaking. Hey, what do you think of this flavor? What flavor do you find in there? Okay, but at any rate, this becomes okay. Let's keep going. The im ein sham goy. If there is no non-Jew, l'tayam to taste it. Rishayim v'shishim, you go by 60. Our sages determined that 60 to the ratio is when flavor is nullified. And we learned this from last week's parsha. Anybody? From the Nazir. Because the Nazir has to boil the animal that it's his korban. And the thigh has to be given to the kohen. And the flavor of the thigh is forbidden for the Jew to eat, and it's being cooked together with the rest of the animal. So our sages determined that the thigh is 1/60th of the rest of the animal. Okay, so the flavor is nullified. I think I'm not sure if I mentioned that this year. I think I did when we first learned it. But at any rate, Mayor is excited to show me that this is what it is. He says, yeah, you're right. That's not from our parsha. There's other things in the last week's parsha that's related to Mas Machalot, to Taruvis, but that's one of them. Okay, likewise, so that's if they're mimbish and minoi, they're two different flavor types, and therefore we deter the question of nullification is going to be first of all nullification of substance, and number two, nullification of flavor. And for flavor, you either have a goy or 60 times. Likewise, if they are both of the same type, like kosher fat with non-kosher fat, chelev and shuman, because you cannot determine the flavor. So then Mishar Bashishim, we got to go by 60. In this case, the necessity to go by 60 is only rabbinic, as we know, because the Isa, it's already nullified in the majority. Because there's no flavor, it's nullified in the majority. But the Chachamim still instruct us to nullify the flavor as well, or nullify what would what flavor it would have given if it were of a different type, and if we need 60. I'm going too fast. Please tell me I'll slow down. But says there Mechaber, says there Ramah, this whole question of the non-Jew is irrelevant. The Ein Noigim Achshav, it's not our custom nowadays. Listen, I'll go to rely on a non-Jew at all, even if he's speaking casually. And then for Mashad and Bashishim, we always measure by 60. And as I mentioned, I remember we spoke about this in the year that today, even the Sfardim do not rely on the Goy, they'll rely on the 60. Okay. Now, in this out of min bin minai, if two of the same type mixed together, fat at two types of fat, non-kosher and kosher, chelav and shuman. So daraisa, majority is enough. Now, nishbach, so but the rabbanon, you need 60. Now, the nishbach be'inyan, she'en yechel lama l'sharay. And now, some spilled out. You don't know what ratio of fat, kosher to non-kosher, fell out. You just know that some of this mixture fell out. You don't know, did the majority non-kosher fat fall out? Did the majority kosher fat fall out? You have no idea. Now, if you know that biblically it was kosher. Why? Because you had the majority of kosher. So it wasn't rabbinically kosher because you need 60 rabbinically, even bimin biminoi. But deraisa, it's kosher because you have majority. So now the doubt, because you don't know how much fell out, is only a doubt of a rabbinic nature, not a doubt of a biblical nature. Because biblically speaking, it was already kosher, considering that it was batal b'roiv. Then mutter. Then when this thing falls out into another pot, everything is mutter. Because all you're left with is a doubt of rabbinic. And whenever you have a doubt of rabbinic nature, we go lenient. But if I don't know whether or not I had fat, whether I had a majority of kosher in the first mixture, I had a majority of kosher fat, which means now what spills out is biblically a doubt if it's kosher or not, then also it's forbidden. Because whenever there's a doubt of a biblical nature, we go stringent. Okay. Now continues the Ramah with respect to the question of things that are mixed together that are the same type, kosher fat and non-kosher fat, where biblically speaking, we already explained that ISA, all you need is a majority. Only our sages instituted to have 60. Then, Azlin and Basar Shema, we determine the nature of two things being the same type if they share the same name, they share the same title, even if the flavor isn't the same. In Mushava have a min b'mino, if the name is the same, we say they're the same type. We don't go by flavor, which is a chiddush here. But it's only because there's a whole shach here about this, which we spoke about at the time. But the idea, the basic idea of the Ramah is that because it's only a question of Rabbanon, because biblically speaking, you don't even need an nullification of flavor because it's of the same type, and you have majority. Therefore, we're going to go with the more lenient view that if they have the same type, they have the same name, even not the same flavor, we're going to treat them as the same type. Of course, as you mentioned, I think the Shach raises this question. What do you mean the whole question of Tom Kicker? Who cares about the name? But nonetheless, this is the Ramah's view. In Mushava Allah, if they're the same or not. That's what we determine based on name, not just flavor. Again, this is only a question of a rabbinic nullification, not a biblical one. Okay. Avalbad, back to the Shulchan Aruch, continue that Ramah. Avalbad, if non-kosher mixed with kosher, that's of a different type, which now means we require biblically the nullification of flavor, which as far as we're concerned means 60. Then nishbach binyin, and now a little bit fell out. And I don't know, did I have 60 at the time? I feel another there. Even if I know that I had a majority of kosher, also it's forbidden. Because now the doubt is of a biblical nature, because maybe it was given flavor. Because if it's min and minoi, even there I need the nullification of flavor, which we understand is 60. And therefore, when there's a mixture, even if the majority is kosher, minority is non-kosher, if a little bit fell out, it's min and minoi. I don't know what the ratio of that thing that fell out is. I have to go stringent and say it's awesome. Now, what if something non-kosher falls into something that's of its own type and something that's not of its own type? So non-kosher fat, chelev, falls into a stew that includes both kosher fat, which is of the same type, and it has meat, which is not of the same type. So the pot now has two different things in there to nullify this non-kosher. Part of it's its own type, part of it's not its own type. So then the nishbach, and now a little bit fell out. And I cannot determine if that which fell out is kosher or non-kosher, what ratio of kosher to non-kosher. Now, no, but no, if I know that it was nullified at least by the majority of its own type, then I had a biblical nullification, even though I didn't have the rabbinic nullification, so I didn't have 60. And there is other food types which would require 50, 60. But in reality, in its own type, I nullified it biblically because the non-kosher fat was nullified by the kosher fat to a majority, by a majority. Then all I'm left with is a rabbinic doubt. And if we cancel the fact that there's meat in there which is not of the same type, Bashar, and the rest, which is minoy of its own type, is in the majority and nullifies it, biblically speaking. And therefore, all I'm left with is a rabbinic doubt, and if I go lenient. Is that clear? Again, I'm moving fast, I know, but this is all refreshing. When is this all true? That what? That when you have a question of a rabbinic doubt, sorry, if it's a rabbinic doubt, the medvar that we go lenient on the rabbinic doubt, namely, it's min bin minoi, and I know there was a roiv. I didn't have 60 to the ratio, but I know there was a roiv, and now a little bit fell out of that pot. So my doubt is of a rabbinic nature, did I have 60 to nullify, or do I have 60 to nullify? This is dafka only, specifically benishbach, when it's spilled out accidentally. Aval, but isishinis arev beheter, non-kosher that mixed with kosher, and lefanenu, and we have it now present in front of us. We have this mixture in front of us. Who lefanenu, it's right before us. And I don't know if it's 60 to the ratio or not. Even though it is a rabbinic nature, us it's still forbidden. Why is that? Because the only kind of doubt that I go lenient by rabbinic is a kind of a doubt which is inherent and unknowable. Whereas if I don't know how to measure the 60 ratio, it's not because it's unknowable, it's because of lack of knowledge on my end. And lack of knowledge on my end does not constitute a doubt to go lenient by. A doubt to go lenient by, when it's a rabbinic doubt, is only in a situation where it is an inherent halachic doubt as to what's present. And no amount of knowledge will help me get the answer. But if I had better skills and knew how to differentiate and determine whether it's 60 to the ratio or not, and it's just my lack of skill, then I don't count that as a doubt to go lenient, and I have to go stringent. Valid. Is shenis bashalam heter non-kosher that's been cooked together with kosher. Even if I can recognize the non-kosher item, and I could see right there it's a full whole piece of non-kosher meat. It didn't dissolve into the kosher, and then zarko, I extracted it, threw it away, obviously. So I threw away the non-kosher. But nonetheless, because the non-kosher was cooked in the kosher, so I got rid of the item, but I still have tam kikr to worry about because it just non-kosher flavor was cooked into my kosher stew. So even though I got rid of the non-kosher item, I still have to deal with the flavor. And therefore, it's sort of shishim connected to iser. I need to have 60 to the ratio of the entirety of the size of the meat. Why? Because I don't know how much flavor is extracted from this meat. I don't know how much flavor was extracted from the non-kosher meat. And therefore, I'm going to assume at the highest possible amount, which is going to be the size of the entirety of the piece of meat itself. Therefore, continues the Shulchan Aruch. If I'm cooking kosher food in a non-kosher pot, and the flavor and the pot was used within the last 24 hours for non-kosher, and therefore it's giving off a non-kosher positive flavor, so I have to nullify that flavor. So that's case one. Case two, I'm cooking kosher food in a kosher pot. But instead what happened was, Tachav Kafshel Isser, I put in a non-kosher ladle into that kosher stew, beheter into my kosher pot, and that non-kosher ladle was used in the last 24 hours. So again, I don't know how much non-kosher flavor came out of the pot or the ladle. And it's bas yoima, it's ben yoima, and therefore it's positive flavor. So tzarech shishim keneget kol hakadeda, or keneget kol mashatachah batakaf. I need to go to the max of how much could this pot possibly give off. And I need to go to the max, how much could this ladle possibly give off? and go and therefore nullify to the entirety of the pot, or nullify to the 60 times the ratio of the entire pot, or 60 times the ratio of the size of the volume of the entire ladle. Because I have no idea how much is absorbed from the pots or the ladle. Whether or not the ladle or the pot is of earthenware or cheres, or eggs or wood, or matachas or metal make a difference. Comes the Ramah and qualifiers. And only that, which we just finished saying, that you need to have 60 to the ratio of the entirety of the volume of the pot or the volume of the ladle, is only on condition that the pot or the ladle absorb non-kosher within the last 24 hours whilst direct contact with the heat. Because then the pot or the vessel, the pot or the ladle will absorb through and through. And therefore, I need to have 60 against the entire ladle or pot because I don't know how much is given from it. But I did tichas malika. What if the pot or the ladle only absorbed because it was salted for a long enough time? It only absorbs in its pot, in its own vesselness, right? The vessel only absorbs, good evening, the vessel only absorbs only a surface layer, whether it's the pot or the ladle. And therefore, you only need to nullify, you only have to have 60 to the ratio of the surface layer of the ladle or the pot. By see earlier which is going to be in Hilchos Milcha. We'll get to that. Back to the Shulchan Aruch after the Ramah, middle of Sif Dalet. There are those who are stringent in a particular case. The kaf shemataches, if the ladle is metal, to needs that you require 60 against the volume of the entire ladle. Even if only part of the ladle went in. So opinion one would say, I only need 60 against the ratio of that which was inserted into the pot. But opinion B says, with respect to metal, you need 60 to the ratio against the entire pot or ladle. Why? Because there's a principle when it comes to metal that as soon as a little bit of it gets hot, all of it gets hot. We know this, right? You stick in a hot ladle into the soup, the top of the handle gets hot very quickly. And therefore, the absorption and extraction doesn't just happen at the place of contact, it happens throughout the entirety of the metal ladle. This is the opinion of that view. We had this discussion in a different siman, in a different milk and meats. Here's Tarova's kosher, non-kosher. There was milk and meat, but yeah, we had a discussion already. And we had it with respect to, I think, respect to Pesach. The only time we were machmer, right? That was the din then, if I remember correctly. At any rate, says the Ramal, the Noyag in Kisvar Rishayna. Sorry, I skipped the line. No, this I skipped the line. If a Noyag in Kisvar Rishayna, our view is to follow the first opinion, which is we only measure against how much was inserted in the actual soup, not against the entire ladle, even though it would be metal. Continues the Ramah and kind of gives us an interesting summary, which are important dinim that seem to be implied by the Shulchan Aruch, but didn't say them directly. Chol iser, anything that's prohibited, shemavatim b'shishim, which is nullified by 60. In makira, if you can identify the item, tzarech lasidim b'shem, you have to extract it from there. Afakav then is karan is battle time of b'shishim, even though I've already nullified its flavor by 60 to the ratio, because nullification of the item itself is not by ratio. Well, at least not always. It's only nullified by ratio if I cannot identify it. But if I can identify the prohibition, it's never nullified. The flavor can be nullified, but not in itself. And therefore, I must extract it. Therefore, says the Ramah, this is an interesting din. If you had non-kosher fat that falls into a stew, then it's backed by tara b'shishim, and the flavor that the fat gives off is nullified by 60. You got to pour cold water into your stew, and the nature of the fat is going to be to congeal and float at the top of the water. And you see that, you can take it out, be shown from there. Even though right now I cannot identify it because it's completely dissolved in the mixture, because I can easily identify it, I'm therefore required to do so.
Have you seen this work in practice?
Never tried it, but do an experiment at home. Maybe I should do it with my kids just because it's a halachic experiment. Why not? It's required to extract it. Never tried it, no.
I was curious if it actually would work, but we need because
I trusted that I don't know. I see we tried it at home. Why wouldn't you? Okay. Is battle prohibited food that was nullified within a kosher stew or kosher pot of cooked something. 60 to the ratio. And you extracted the actual piece. So the piece itself is gone and the flavor has been nullified by 60. Then, and this piece which I extracted fell into another pot. So I need to have 60 to the ratio against the thing itself. Even though I already assumed that all the flavor came out in pot one, which is why it's 60 to the ratio against it. When it falls into pot two, I have to have again 60 to the ratio against it. Why? Because I didn't, the reason why I had 60 to the ratio in the first pot wasn't because I knew for certain that all the flavor came out. It's because I'm going to the max possible amount of flavor that could come out. And therefore I have to go to the same thing to the second pot because I don't know how much went into which pot. So I got to give each pot the benefit of the doubt and nullify it by the max, which would be 60 against this full volume. The same thing is true forever. From pot 3 to pot 4 to pot 5, the same thing, the same non-kosher food bouncing from pot to pot. Each pot requires 60 against it because I don't know how much was extracted from each one. And therefore I got to assume in each one it goes to the max, which is it, the volume of it itself.
You're able to consolidate a pot, let's say it was one like it's really small.
It's gonna come up. But if it fell into the same pot twice, I only need one time 60 against it. Because even if a little bit of flavor came out the first time it fell in, and a little bit of flavor came out the second time it fell in, it's never going to be more than the volume of itself. And if it falls into the same pot a bunch of times, I only need 60 against its volume. If it falls into different pots, I have to give the benefit of that to each pot because I don't know how much fell out into each pot. But it's never going to exfoliate more than its own volume in one location. So even if it fell into the same pot multiple times, I only need 60 against its own volume. Okay. Now let's see earlier in section 94. Hey, I was actually hoping we can get through some Tzaddik Ches and Tzaddik Ches today, and we may be able to do it. This is great. If I know, if I know how much non-kosher was in that pot or that ladle. For example, kav chadasha. It's a new ladle. It's only been used once, and I know it's only been used to flip one small little hot dog that's non-kosher at an ounce size. Right? So I know how much flavor is in there. Or the last time I interacted with non-kosher was more than 24 hours ago. Shanirba. And now I mix with it a little bit amount of milk, and absorbed exactly an ounce of milk. So now all I have non-kosher in this ladle is 1 ounce worth where the milk and meat interacted. And now I mixed. Now I use that ladle either because it was used with one thing non-kosher, I know how much it is, or it's one interaction of milk and meat, which I know how much it is, and now I put it into my kosher pot. I only need to have 60 to the ratio of the ounce that I know is in there. It's non-kosher. I don't need to have 60 against the entire ratio of the entire ladle or the entire pot because I know exactly how much is in there. Now, says the Ramah, we do not say that the entire vessel becomes itself a source of prohibition. We do say, as we learned earlier, that which is absorbed within the pot is a machlokes, but there are more rules that we're going to be stringent, and we will say and therefore, if the milk fell on the outside of the pot, we have to see how much the milk expands inside nasan nevela, but that's only with respect to that which is absorbed in the pot. But the pot itself, the ladle itself, will not become nevela. And because I know how much the ladle absorbed, I can nullify by that amount. I don't need to have the ratio against the entire ladle or the entire pot. Okay? But an older ladle that has been used many times, not new, and it was used in the last 24 hours. So now, because it was used many times, and it was used in the last 24 hours, so all the flavor that's in there, even if it would only interact, even if that flavor is 10 days old, but now it's freshly again interacting with kosher. It's freshly interacting now with non-kosher heat. It all becomes nevela. And then from a shayr and bukula, you have to have nullification, 60 to the ratio of the entire ladle, because everything that's in there is suspect of being non-kosher and exfoliating. As he explains, the kol mashabala nasa iser, the didn't come abala. Everything that's been absorbed in that ladle ever becomes chanan, because now it absorbed non-kosher. Or according to the machaber, now it absorbed milk and meat. But everything absorbed in that ladle that ever was is chanan, and therefore I have to have 60 against the ratio of the entire ladle or an entire pot. not just against the ounce that it absorbed now. Yesh mishomer, now those that say shegam bezu, even with respect to this ladle, right? That was this ladle, which was a meat ladle, which was used in the last 24 hours, and now it absorbed an ounce of milk. So I know that there's 1 ounce of milk and meat interaction. I don't have to have, I only need to have 60 against the ounce of chalav, and not against an ounce of chalav and an ounce of meat that it's interacting with. Only against the chalav, the milk. Right? Because this opinion says that Hanan is not with respect to that which is absorbed in the pot, in a ladle. Right? We had this machlekes earlier. There was 2 machlekes, and one is, do we say Hanan by other Yisurim? And the other one is, we don't say Hanan about the ladle, but do we say Hanan about that which is absorbed in the ladle, even with respect to milk and meat? So if I say there's Hanan by that which is absorbed in the ladle, therefore when this ladle absorbs an ounce of milk, I have to have 60 against 2 ounces. An ounce of milk plus an ounce of meat that's in the ladle that it interacted with. But if I don't say Hanan by that which is absorbed, then I only need 60 against the milk, not against the meat that the milk interacts with. Because the milk is interacting with meat inside the ladle and doesn't become Hanan inside of the ladle, according to this view. But says the Ramah, the first opinion is the proper one, because as we already learned, commotion is biolil, as we already learned in Tzaddik Hey, with respect to the drop of milk that falls onto a pot, we already ruled that we do say Hanan in absorption. We don't say Hanan of a pot, but we do say Hanan with respect to that which is absorbed in a pot. And therefore, I would have to have 60 against not just the milk, but the milk and meat interaction inside the lid. Okay. Yesh, there are those, said Ramon. They make no distinction between whether the ladle is new or old, whether it's the first time or not first time. Rak, they make a distinction between they make a difference between earthenware vessels and other vessels like wood or metal. When they say the but when it comes to earthenware vessels, because there is no such thing as kosherizing earthenware vessels, which means I can never extract the flavor that's absorbed in an earthenware vessel by boiling it up. Then we do say that the ladle itself becomes a nevela. So this view says you're right that vessels do not become nevela. That's only if you can extract the flavor from the ladle. Right? We spoke about this idea of efshel aser or efshel aser mutter. This question of when you can extract flavor from something potentially, do I therefore say it's not part of the actual thing because I can extract it? So because I can extract the flavor out of metal, I'm not going to say the metal is a source of non-kosher because I can extract the kosher. But when it comes to an earthenware vessel, says this view, because you cannot extract the flavor in it, the entire earthenware vessel is treated like a nevela itself. That's not true of other vessels, which you can extract the flavor from it using hagala. And therefore, it's good to be stringent and treat earthenware vessels as if the entire earthenware vessel is nevela. Okay, Sivav, clear? A lot of details, but hopefully clear.
There'll be a problem with your earthenware cup that was trade, whatever. There was an avila that fell into your pot.
Correct. Get that 60 to the ratio of the entire earthenware vessel. Okay. We're not going to go sidetrack now.
I'm just saying, like,
but there's all the dinim, and there's a famous Moshe about it. Anyway, okay. Let's continue about buying china and all that. You inherit non-kosher china. What do you do? I actually get this question more often than you imagine. My grandmother left me expensive china. Can I use it? It hasn't been used in 30 years. All right, I don't want to get sidetracked because you want to do CHAZZARAH. Let's continue. Vav, kachatzi's ice shalisser, a half ounce, half a zayis of forbidden, which is paches mashir. It's less than the requisite amount for you to be liable biblically. Now, it's called chatzi shir in halacha. Chatzi shir, which means partial requisite amount, is forbidden, but not held accountable. Classic example, you steal a half a pruta. Forbidden to steal a half a pruta from someone, but you may not be liable to return it. Same thing, a person eats half an ounce of chalev, no lashes, but forbidden to eat. Same thing with Shabbos. Chatzi shir. This is a big sugya. So now I have a half a ratio of the non-kosher. Nonetheless, it's Arab heter, which mixed into kosher. Nonetheless, shishim chatzai zesi heter levatloi. I still need 60 to the ratio. So I need 60 half sesim. Zion. Bates, is down. An egg which has a bit of a chick growing in it, or a blood spot to in such a manner that it is now forbidden, which would not be the case of our chickens today, as we spoke about many times. Our chicken blood spots are not real blood. Yeah, but it's in North America, correct? But going third world country, I guess it still is non-kosher. We spoke about. So it says the shulchan is bashla and now I cooked it with other eggs. So the shishim va'achat levatli needs 61 eggs against it. Levatl pleitosa to nullify its exfoliation. So obviously you got to remove that egg, but you need 61 eggs, not just 60 to the ratio. Why? Because eggs are of different size, and it's possible that the one that had non-kosher is bigger than the other eggs, which are smaller. So to make it for that difference, have one extra egg. Yes. You always have to remove it. Yeah, we spoke about that. Oh, if you don't know which one it is, that becomes in a later siman, right, where you're pouring it out. You don't know which one it is. But this is a question of you know it is. You know it is here. You're taking it out. The later siman was with respect to eggs and fish, when you don't know which one was the non-kosher one. Okay. Sivches. 8. Sorry.
Nothing. I'm just remembering that. He ate it, not you.
That's right. Chal, the udder of a cow, which we skipped the laws about that. Was it Siman Kuf Yud it was? I think we skipped, or Kuf Tes, which one was it? We skipped it. We're going to skip it. Meaning in our CHAZZARAH, we're going to skip it, but we did skip it already. What was it, Kuf Aleph? I don't remember which thing did we skip? So the test. No, it's like it's not going to skip. No, Betis didn't skip either. Yeah, I don't know which one it is. I think it's Kuf. No, Kuf Tes we learned. My gosh, my memory is so bad when it comes to numbers. At any rate, we skipped the halachas of chal. Chal is an udder, which has its own separate dinim because technically it's meat, but it has milk in it, and there's a whole system and process by extracting the milk from the meat. I didn't do that. I did not extract the milk from the meat. So there's milk still in the udder. Now, I only need 59 to the ratio because the udder itself combines to nullify the milk that's in it. So I only need 59 to the ratio of the udder. Haga. Now here comes another interesting summary from the Ramah, which I don't know if there's any machlekes here going on against the Mechaber. I don't think there's, if I don't remember correctly. But there's an interesting summary from the Ramah here. All prohibitions that are observable today, whether they're biblical or rabbinic, doesn't make a difference. Kulam is batla b'shishim. All of them have a 60 ratio. This, of course, is only speaking outside of Eretz Yisrael, because in Eretz Yisrael you have other things like Tevel and Arla, which have different rules. But outside of Eretz Yisrael, with the exception of Milvad, Chametz Pesach, and Yayin Nesach, and wine rendered non-kosher because a non-Jew used it. Those instances are nullification is higher. As we will explain when we come to the laws of Pesach and we come to the laws of Yayin Nesach. Uavad, and this is all on condition that the prohibition doesn't give flavor. The kadeda and the rest of the pot and the rest of the food. Right? That's the whole point. The whole point here is you have to have bittul of the item itself, either because it's dissolved or because I removed it. And you have to have bittul of tam kikri, the bittul of the flavor. And the sages determined that the flavor is nullified by 60. But if after 60 the flavor is still there, the fact that you have 60 is not going to help you. But if the non-kosher is still giving flavor to that pot, to that rest of the food, even though I have 60, 70, 100 times the ratio, and the item that is mixed in there is non-kosher in and of itself. Not that it's absorbed of non-kosher, but it itself is non-kosher. Even by 100, by 1,000, it's not going to become nullified. So long as you taste the flavor. As long as you identify the flavor of the non-kosher, not nullified. Right? Because the whole 60 is just a determiner that the sages determined based on, as we explained before, from Nazir, that 60 to the ratio nullifies the flavor. But if the flavor is still there, in fact, 60 schmixty, the flavor is there. All right. Therefore, melach, betavlin, salt, and spices. Which are meant to give flavor in a small quantity. right? And let's say they're forbidden, they themselves are forbidden of their own right, because the guy used the salt for Avodah Zarah, let's say, or whatever the reason, or not, or you, God forbid, use it for Avodah Zarah, or maybe it's Isser of Tevel, or whatever it is. It will not be nullified by 60, because you always have much more than 60 to the ratio of salt in your soup, and you taste the flavor of the salt. That's the whole point. The island come on Sim Kufay, see later Sim Kufay, which was the first simon we ever learned. Sim Kufay, which we're going to skip now in our test because we had it in our first test. And there we learned at the end that if salt has blood in it, it could be nullified because it's not the salt that's the issue, it's the blood that it absorbed. And this problem of not nullifying because the flavor is still there is only the thing itself is non-kosher, not if it absorbs non-kosher. Yes. Sorry?
Considered a salt. That's why.
Salt is considered a solid, but it will be dissolved in the soup.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
Another,
if you have 5 pounds of salt and some trait or whatever, or something mixed into it, you can measure based on.
I would venture to say as follows: if you spice the soup with pepper, and you somehow went through the painstaking process of extracting every single flake of pepper because you can identify it, you can see it, there's black dots, you would still taste the pepper in your soup, even after you took out every single pepper in there. It's the nature of these spices. In which case, it would not be nullified. I'm going to guess. Try it. Another experiment you can do.
If you have a block of salt and you have a treifa that falls into it, can it be nullified within 60 times the ratio salt to the treifa?
Yeah.
That's my question.
But here we're talking about the salt as treifa.
No, that's what I'm
Yes, absolutely. Of course you can.
And you can use that salt, even a little bit of it.
Absolutely. Here we're talking about the salt itself is non-kosher.
Yeah,
all right. Hey, Tess, I'm sorry. Last sif, sound like Tess, right? Beautiful. A pot, a stew that's 59 measures. Let's do ounces because it makes it easier for us. 59 ounces of kosher stew. And 2 non-kosher ounces fell in there. Shel dam, ve'echad shel chelev. 1 ounce of blood, non-kosher. 1 ounce of fat, non-kosher. Chelev. So kol lechem is that from shel hetel l'matel chavedai. Each ounce of the blood and fat, respectively, combines with the other 59 ounces to nullify the other non-kosher. Because again, the point is the flavor is gone. So if the flavor of the fat is gone, even though it happens to be that blood is part of that which is nullifying that fat, doesn't make a difference. The flavor of the fat is gone. Same thing conversely. The flavor of the blood is gone, even though we're using fat to do so. Okay? Likewise, if I have 29 ounces of kosher, and now an ounce of fat, an ounce of milk falls in there. So let's just assume it was parev, not just assume, it is parev. And now an ounce of milk fell in there, it's now a milchik pot. But it's only milchik because there's an ounce of milchik to the ratio of 29 parev. And the next pot right next to it, shloishim shall have there. I have 30 ounces, because they said 30 ounces of parev of kosher. The nafal because I shall dam. And sorry, not milk yet. Milk is coming soon. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Chalev, it's fat. So I have 29 ounces of kosher meat, let's say, and into it falls an ounce of chalev, non-kosher fat. So that's all non-kosher because I haven't nullified the fat. And in the other pot, I have 30 ounces of kosher and an ounce of blood fell in there, so it's all non-kosher because I haven't nullified the blood. But when it's arva b'shoigig, and now these 2 pots mixed together, which gives me a total of 59 kosher, 1 ounce fat, 1 ounce blood. Mutter, it's mutter. Again, only if it's happened by accident, because if it happens on purpose. You cannot nullify non-kosher in the first instance. We learned it's like this.
If we just have the case where we just have, let's say, like imagine we have 59. Like here the 2 separate cases, right? If you pours it, the 29 and the 1, if each said 59 and the 2 fall out at the same time, it would be the same.
That was the first case.
Yeah.
We have 59 in 1 pot, and the milk, meat, blood, and fat fall in the same thing. Yeah. Said that of course, chicane. How much more so? Shnei zeisim. This is the case I skipped to. Shnei zeisim echad shel gevina v'echad shel basar. You have 2 ounces, 1 of milk, 1 of meat, and each one fell into a different pot of parev. 1 against 30 and 1 against 29, which means you have 1 milchik pot by dint of the fact that it's an ounce of milk, and you have 1 fleischik pot by dint of the fact that it has an ounce of meat. And then they mix together the kolach and matal chavera. Each one can nullify each other. because no chanan. Chanan only happened when milk and meat
Right.
interact with each other. But because the milk and meat were in separate pots, they didn't become chanan. And therefore, when they mix together, the milk and meat could be used with the other 59 ounces of partiv to nullify the other one.
That's when we stipulated, I remember, that that's when one's poured one after the other, not when they're poured together at the same time.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, we have.
Then it becomes Tanan because they're
That's right.
at the exact same time.
Now we have. Let's go to the test. We still have 15 minutes till mincha. So let us learn as much as we can of the tests. All right. Din imatzamos mistap levatl iser shel levatl iser lechatchila. Two different dinim that come together in this siman, which is how do we treat bones of kosher and non-kosher respectively, and whether they are part of the 60. And number two, the prohibition against nullifying non-kosher in the first instance by adding kosher to the point that it's nullified. Chaticha nevelo, non-kosher. So boy zayin sifman, we have 7 subsections in the siman. Chaticha nevelo shesh b'bas v'atzal mishnafel l'kader heter. A non-kosher piece of meat that contains bones in it, and it falls into a kosher pot. They were raw at the time it happens, as we're going to learn in a moment. And now it's all together, it's cooked together. The bones of the non-kosher food, mitzvah from meheter, get added to the non-kosher to create the ratio levatla isser to nullify it by 60. Why? Because the point of the nullification by 60 is that the flavor of the non-kosher expands into 60 times its ratio, and when it expands into 60 times its ratio, its flavor is no longer detectable. So it doesn't matter what else is there. Whatever absorbs that flavor is part of the 60 that's going to nullify it. And therefore, this bone, which initially is a bone, it's not the non-kosher meat, it will also absorb some of that non-kosher meat flavor, and therefore it can be part of the 60 ratio of kosher. Yep. We needless to say, continues the Shulchan Aruch. How much more so the bones that are in the kosher meat and the rest left do certainly is going to be part of the kosher ratio to nullify. But the marrow, thank you, that's in the bones of the non-kosher. Mistara from Isser is part of the non-kosher, of course, because that's edible meat, considered non-kosher. Delicacy, in fact. A new favorite heart clogger. The gufa kadeya ain mistaf le misiv le heter. The pot itself, even though generally speaking we say the pot absorbs, right? Which is why we have all this dinim about cooking in non-kosher pots. But nonetheless, the volume of the pot will not serve to be part of the 60 to nullify it, even though the bones will. Because, as we already looked in the last siman, we never know how much is actually absorbed in the pot. So we cannot rely on it. So on the one hand, when it comes to extracting from the pot, we assume to the max the pot possibly can take. But when it comes to leniency and say it absorbs, we don't know how much it absorbed, maybe nothing at all. And therefore, we're not going to use it as part of the 60. Says the Ramon, there are those who are stringent and do not use the bones of the non-kosher to be part of the kosher to nullify. Nonetheless, says the Ramon, I agree with the Machaber that you should be able to use the bones, but you should be stringent, except the Makam Hefsed, Kikain Iker. Sorry, yes, because I agree in principle with the Machaber, says the Ramah. Therefore, in a case of monetary loss, doesn't even say Hefsed Meruba, doesn't say major loss. Any monetary loss, go with the first opinion, which says that the bones of the non-kosher is part of the kosher to nullify, because in principle I agree with him. Just that when you can, be stringent like the other view. Dates. But all of this is true. That I can use the bones of the non-kosher to be part of the kosher to nullify is that I say that the bones of the non-kosher is used as part of the kosher to nullify when the non-kosher that fell into the kosher was all raw. But if it's cooked meat, so this non-kosher chicken leg was cooked before, and then it fell into a kosher pot, and then it falls into a kosher pot, then the bone is part of the non-kosher, because it already previously absorbed the kosher. Because it already absorbed the non-kosher flavor beforehand. Even though the Machaber is not of the view of Chatich Chanas Nevela. And we're going to learn that generally speaking, he takes them, by Shari Surim doesn't say Chatich Chanas Nevela, to such a degree that at least as Machaber is going to tell us here, the piece of meat that absorbed non-kosher, the piece itself can be part of the kosher to nullify. When it comes to bone, no, because it's mechuber, because it's attached. Because they're attached, therefore we do treat chanan, so to speak, of that bone, and therefore if it was first cooked. So now when that cooked non-kosher leg falls into a kosher stew, I need to nullify even the bone, not just the meat. And certainly cannot use the bone to be part of the ratio of kosher to nullify the meat. Gimel, we have time for one more sif? I think we do. The Shari Sodim, this is the machlekes we've been talking about 1,000 times. The Shari Sodim and other prohibitions, with the exception of with the exception of kosher milk and meat. The piece of meat that contains in it the flavor of non-kosher, can be used as part of the kosher to nullify. Not only because I am of the view, said the Machaber, that the piece of meat does not become a source of non-kosher. It's only containing non-kosher. Because it's a container of non-kosher, it inherently remains kosher. And therefore, it can be part of the 60 ratio of kosher to nullify the non-kosher. Even though we learned in Tzaddik days, he seems to have a contradiction, and we rule the other way. But nonetheless, he certainly doesn't say Nasan Abed. Says that, however, our view is not to follow this leniency, because we're of the view, the holy sort of with all prohibitions, the piece itself becomes a source of prohibition, even though it's only absorbent of non-kosher. As we learned at great length in chapter 92, with respect to Bas B'Cholov. We'll do one more sif. Keep going. Misharim, when we measure 60 to the ratio, we include in that 60 the gravy, the kippah, and the little strands of fat that stuck to the bottom of the pot, and all the various different pieces of food that's in there. Whatever's in that stew, lentils, beans, barley, whatever it is, all part of the 60 to nullify the non-kosher. When we treat the question of the ratio as it's presented to us in the Rav. The rabbi was answering the question. Even though originally the kosher was 60 to the ratio, but now because it kept on cooking, it shrunk a bit. Nonetheless, to be shula in the cooking process, and let's say nivel b'tfonis b'katera, and some of the kosher is absorbed now in the pot or evaporated. I measure the ratio now, not the way it would have imagined to have been at the beginning. Why is that? Because the same rate at the non-kosher, that the kosher disappears or shrinks, it's very possible the non-kosher also shrinks at the same rate. So I have to treat it the way I see it at the moment. And if the moment it's not 60 to the ratio, non-kosher, even if hypothetically maybe it was 60 to the ratio earlier. He continues when is this true? When it's one item inside the other item. And therefore the requirement for 60 is biblical. Because I got to nullify the flavor, because it's min b'she'ein minoy. But if it's a mixture of its own type, non-kosher fat and kosher fat, then biblically speaking, it's nullified already in the majority. And the requirement of 60 is only rabbinic. I can go lenient. And then from a sharim I can nullify by measuring how much the pot absorbed of the kosher. It's inside the walls of the pot, as opposed to that which has been evaporated. Okay, and you have to have a good, proper investigation to discover exactly how much is absorbed inside the pot, which, as we learned in our shirim, nowadays we have no idea how to do that. So we anyways don't have this halacha in any practical sense. But we treat it, says in Shulchan Aruch, as if the kosher flavor that's been absorbed in the pot, as if it's here, nullifying the kosher. But that which has been evaporated because of the heat, that I'm not going to combine as part of the 60 to nullify, because that has been completely and totally gone. So the page a little bit bigger, so I think we'll stop over here. God willing, on Sunday. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, everybody's okay with that? So we'll do a few more sifim between Mincha and Ma'ariv.
We're here.
I'm okay with that. So I'm going to put a pause in the recording and we'll keep it going after.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Siman Tzedek Tes, Sif Hey. So our plan tonight is as follows. Whichever one comes first, whether we finish the Siman first or Mariv comes first, that's when we're stopping. So let's see if we can finish the Siman. We only have two Sifim to go, Sif Hey and Sif Vav. And if the second half, Sif Vav and Zion, sorry, three Sifim. The second half of the Siman, which is Ein Mevatel and Isla Chatchila, we do not in the first instance go ahead and nullify that which is prohibited. Sorry, just gonna shut the doors. Okay. So keep an eye on the clock. That's 9:12. We gotta stop so we don't miss Baruch. Okay, hey. We may not, in the first instance, go ahead and nullify that which is prohibited. If it's already nullified, if it's already fell into that which is non-kosher, already fell into that which is kosher. I'm just missing the correct ratio. And my sifin love heter, I cannot add kosher to then bring it up to the ratio. So I certainly cannot put it into kosher to nullify it. But even if it fell into the kosher, I couldn't even add more to make it bring it up to the ratio. Over a bitlo, if I went ahead and nullified it, or shariba love. So I to begin with took non-kosher, put it into kosher at the right amount, or it fell into that which is the wrong amount, and then I added more kosher to bring it up to the right amount. In bishagik, if I did so unintentionally, which means I didn't know it was non-kosher. Or I didn't know that something fell in there. I didn't know the law.
Also.
Sorry?
It's intentional also.
No, if it was unintentional, then mutter, it is permitted. You may eat that non-kosher. Okay, a lot of discussion in Shach and Tav. We spoke about it at the time, not for now. But in the Mazid, if I intentionally went ahead and nullified it, you will look at the notes on the side, you'll see the Shach and Taz. In the Mazid, if however I intentionally went ahead and nullified it, it is prohibited for the person who went ahead and did the act of nullifying, if it's his. So I cannot forcibly nullify, ruin something that belongs to somebody else. But if it belongs to me and I intentionally nullified it for myself, then I cannot eat it. Or if it's your food and I went ahead and nullified it for you on your behalf, it will be forbidden for you as well. Because the whole point there is that you should not have benefit from your having intentionally nullified something. Continues the Ramah, sorry. Not only may you not eat it, you may not sell it to a Jew, because then I would be gaining from that kosher, because it was only 5 ounces of kosher, or 60 ounces of kosher. And now that I added an ounce of non-kosher, I'm selling it for a bit more worth that extra ounce. So I'm gaining money by selling it, and therefore forbidden, so that I don't gain from by having nullified it, unless I sell it for the difference for a cheaper price, as we learned in our shirta. But for anybody else, the person didn't do it intentionally. It wasn't for that person. Somebody else can enjoy it because at the end of the day, it is nullified. Now, so there are Dafka. This is only now. The question becomes issue of Hanan. This is all well, nice and good according to the Ramah, where no Hanan happens because it's non-kosher into kosher. It's not milk and meat. But according to the Ramah, where kosher into non-kosher becomes Hanan. So at some point, the food becomes Hanan before then it gets nullified and added more permitted. So how do I even have this whole din of adding extra to nullify it? I would have to add much, much more because it's Hanan. And therefore explains it. I follow that. Yeah. Kind of a little bit. If 1 to 20 ratio falls in, all that 20 is non-kosher. So what do I do? Added kosher, bring it to 60. I have to bring 60 times the amount of 20, not the amount of 1. That's Hanan, right? So how do I deal with this? So it says that I'm all like this. The dafka specifically, therefore, is added yavish by yavish, where 2 dry items that were not cooked together, where the entire mixture is forbidden if it's an equal ratio. But as soon as I have a third item, making it a majority, it becomes kosher. Over there, there's no Hanan. That's all dry. It's not being mixed together. It's just 2 pieces of meat. I don't know which one's kosher, which one's not kosher. And then I'm going to add a third piece of meat that's kosher. Now I'm not nullified the majority. I don't know which of the 3 is kosher or non-kosher. Right? And we learn later that dry items that don't cook together are nullified 1 and 2. Except that this is machlekes, we have to throw 1 away or not throw 1 away. But it's nullified 1 and 2, and there's no Hanan there because it's dry. Right?
Right. Moist words.
Sorry, it's only when it's mixed together we have issue of Hanan. Or afilu lach behet lach. If it's liquid and liquid, in which case there would be Hanan. But when it came to Simtzad Beis, we learned, besides for the machlekes of whether or not there's Hanan by Shari Surim, besides for the machlekes whether there's Hanan by that which is absorbed in pots, there's also machlekes does Hanan happen by liquid and liquid. So according to that opinion, which is there's no chanan by liquid and liquid, then I can have a 1 to the 20 ratio. It's not chanan. Adding 40 more wouldn't nullify it. Because it's not chanan. According to that view, lach balach doesn't become chanan. Clear? Yeah.
So we're relying on leniency though.
For following that view. Yeah. And we already learned, they put me here in the notes, that at the time we learned that hefsek b'rova we could rely on that view. When there's great loss, we can rely on the view that says that lach balach is not chanan. We also learned that with respect to double leniency, double stringencies equal leniency. Okay. For a piece of meat absorbed non-kosher. It's not going to help you to add 60 times the ratio of the non-kosher. You have to have 60 times the ratio of the piece of meat because the piece of meat became chanan. Because Amninan Bay, with respect to a piece of meat that absorbed non-kosher, we say the whole piece of meat becomes a source of non-kosher. So 60 times the ratio of the absorption is not going to help if there's 60 times the ratio of the piece of meat. Plus throw out that piece of meat. Continues the Rama, those who are even more stringent than they say, even in case of you don't say chanan. For example, 2 dry pieces of meat, one's kosher, one's non-kosher, I don't know which one it is. There's no chanan there because it's not mixed together. Nonetheless, lamahania heter levato. You wouldn't the leniency that accidentally added more is still not going to help to nullify it, according to this other view, which is much more strict. If the mixture happened before I knew about it. So if there's a kosher, non-kosher piece of meat, and now it's sitting next to a kosher piece of meat, I don't know which one's which. Now that mixture happened before I knew about it. Sorry? No, that mixture happened when I knew about it. And I knew about it. So at this juncture, both those pieces of meat are non-kosher. By the fact that I know one's kosher, one's not kosher. Then adding another piece of meat later is not going to help me. Because the halacha already determined this isn't kosher.
It's all in this word that's
Correct.
It's big enough, whatever.
Correct. And therefore, but if I knew about the mixture earlier, so I know these are non-kosher, it's not going to help me to add the third piece later to make it nullified by the majority. Because once I, the halachic ruler, or the observer, knows that there's prohibited in there, and I'm determining that it's not kosher because there's no nullification, the whole thing becomes forbidden to me. And the fact that a third piece comes later, and had I only known about it after the third piece was there, I would say it's nullified in the majority. But because I knew about it before, I cannot do that nullification.
What if Ben adds a third piece, and then you come back and you're like, oh, one of those original 2 pieces were not kosher. And
Still not going to work.
And he's like, I don't know which one my piece added.
So it still won't work. Because you, at one point, the halacha told you 2 of those pieces you can't eat because you knew about it. So because the halacha told you those 2 pieces. Okay, we learned about that, I think, at the time. It still doesn't work. It belongs to you. Because it was known that 2 of them are non-kosher, it becomes non-kosher, even though B'etzem only one's non-kosher. Because halacha said, don't eat these 2, the third one later is not going to help. Okay, Lefiza, based on this, says that Ramah, which means this fact that there's going to be double layer of nullification. First nullification that isn't enough, and then nullification that is enough, right? Then the question is going to become, well, did you know about the first nullification? Because if you didn't know about the first nullification, your second nullification is not going to help because at that point, when you knew about the first nullification, it was usher to you. Right?
Yeah.
Based on this logic. And therefore, the person who's looking at it, the rabbi who's looking at this and wants to make it say it's nullified, he would be required lacher in mitoisif hit lacher shanoida. He would have to ask, did you know about this mixture before it came fully nullified? And if you did, then I can't rely on nullification because at one point the halacha told you can't eat it. He would have to make that investigation. But loy nagu can. It's not the custom. The Rav only answers the question based on how it's observed at the moment. He's not required to go investigate. Did you pour the milk in slowly? Was there less or more soup before? At this point, right now, at 60 to ratio, it's nullified. Even though it's possible that that nullification of 60 happened in piecemeal. And had he brought that question to me an hour ago, when he only had 20 to the ratio, I would have told him it's not kosher. But because right now it's 60 to the ratio, it is kosher. All right. Vav. Isser shall devrayim. If the prohibited prohibition is in question is only of rabbinic nature, nonetheless, you cannot go and nullify the prohibition, even though it's only rabbinic. The Masa came amazing, but if you went ahead and did so purposefully, also it's forbidden, as we said before with the biblical. If they're prohibited non-kosher, if they're rabbinically non-kosher on its own falls into kosher. The ain beheter kedei levatloi, and I don't have 60 declaration to nullify it, but it did fall in there. I can go ahead and actually add more non-kosher to nullify it. So I can't take a non-kosher rabbanon and throw it into my soup. But if it fell into a soup with only 20 to the ratio, I can add 40 more to the ratio and nullify it. Clear?
Say that one more time.
I cannot take a rabbinically prohibited thing and throw it into my soup that has 60 to the ratio. But if it fell into a soup that's 20 to the ratio, I can go and add 40 more to nullify it.
Specifically rabbinically.
Only rabbinic. That's the leniency. However, said the Ramah, those who disagree, and they say, you may not nullify a prohibited item even if it's rabbinic. And you may not even add to the nullification to bring it up to the requisite ratio.
Rabbinically, like chicken and milk.
Let's say,
So as an example.
that's an example. Just like it is by biblical. So the rabbinic, biblical, no nullification. That's our custom. Do not change it. You may not nullify anything, period. Even if you're adding to the nullification by bringing it up to the ratio, whether it's biblical or rabbinic, you may not do so. Even though the Machaber is of the view that if the prohibition was rabbinic, you may not go ahead and nullify it, but if the nullification process began, you may add to the ratio. According to the Machaber. According to the Ramah, you may not do that. Continue the Ramah. Iser shenis batal, a prohibited item which fell into kosher and became nullified. For example, and you had 60 to the ratio, no problem. And now non-kosher was added to this mixture of the same type of the first. So a little bit of non-kosher fat fell in. I have 60 to the ratio. And then a little bit more non-kosher fat fell in. Right? Now, the first ounce of non-kosher fat, which was nullified by 60, is reawakened because it interacts with the new ounce. Now I have 2 ounces against 60. It's not enough. And therefore, Vanessa, everything becomes prohibited. It doesn't make a difference if the fat was nullified in something of not its type, in vegetables, or whether it was in its own type, non-kosher fat and kosher fat. It makes no difference. When extra non-kosher is dropped in, and that extra non-kosher is the same substance as the original non-kosher, the two will meet, reawaken, and now requires more to nullify. Whether it's dry, whether it's liquid, makes sense whether you knew about it before, didn't know about it before. Makes no difference. The two meet, reawaken, and you need to have now 120 ounces, not 60 ounces. Because the 2 ounces of fat met each other and we created a problem. Clear? Use the Rama. A ounce of milk that falls into water and is battled by shishim, and the milk is nullified by 60 to the ratio. Now a little bit of that water falls into a pot of meat. Mutter, it's kosher. Even though the meat doesn't have 60 to the ratio of the milk, because the milk is already nullified in the water before it came to the meat. So even though the meat itself doesn't have 60 to the ratio of the milk, the water that's now in the meat did have 60 to the ratio of the milk is nullified. It's been same thing is true at any other case similar to this. Zion. With this, we conclude Tzaddik test and we hit our goal of finishing Tzaddik test before tonight. If a little bit of non-kosher is absorbed into a pot that is kosher. If this is a massive pot and it's a caterer's pot, and the usual way of using this pot is to make massive quantities, then you may use that pot. In the first case, you don't even need to hagala. Because the prohibition is so tiny and it never will come to the point of adding flavor. You're talking about a massive production, and that tiny drip non-kosher fell into this huge vat, and they always only make massive quantities of applesauce in there, so the flavor is never going to make it there. So you can use that pot.
Whatever, a 4-foot pot that's massive and you need 1 drop.
Correct. It's only the kind of pots that are always going to be used at a mass amount. Right. If it's my frying pan, sometimes I'm going to make 1 egg. right? Sometimes you only heat up 1 cup of soup for myself.
It's like,
But if it's a pot that's going to be used in for massive amounts, it's never going to have a problem of bad flavor. And if we use it, the feedback, therefore, what?
you have a chicken soup pot. It's a massive cauldron.
I was gonna comment on that because chicken soup pot, even though you usually use it for large quantities, you don't always use it for large quantities. That's why I use the example, because Sunday afternoon, you want to reheat your soup to have it, you'll put a little bit in there for yourself.
No, I'm talking about like
You use the other pot. Okay, maybe you're right.
It's only used 3 times a year when my mom makes soup for it's a massive pot.
All right,
It's
maybe.
like, I don't know,
Perhaps.
I'm saying it's because it's
No, I hear what you're saying.
catering pot.
I hear what you're saying.
It
all depends on the usage.
Yeah.
Okay, let's finish this. Therefore, a small amount of probative item that gets absorbed into a big pot. And as we just said, it's the kind of pot that's always used for large quantities. Or a little bit of non-kosher falls into these big jugs that's always filled with lots and lots of wine and cakes and the like. You can to begin with use them. Even if the drop fell in within the last 24 hours. Because it's impossible for that non-kosher to ever give a flavor that's recognizable. If it gets absorbed into a pot, which sometimes is used for small amounts, like a plate, so my frying pan, sometimes I have big quantities of stir fry, but sometimes I just put an egg in there. Then you may not use it even for the great quantity. Lest you, if we allow you to use that pot, telling you conditionally, you can only use the pot if you use big quantities, you might forget and use it because, hey, it's an available pot. I'm going to fry my egg, and it's coming to non-kosher flavor absorption. And if we say, don't use that pot unless it's the kind of pot that's always used for large quantities. That brings us to the end of Tzaddik Ches and Tzaddik Tes. Hit our goal. And I think those who are going to watch it are going to have to put it on minus 1.5. So Sunday, God willing, we're going to do Kuf, Kuf Aleph, Kuf Beis, Kuf Gimel. We're going to bang it all out. And then next Wednesday, and then Sunday following, we get to Malik. Wonderful evening, Yidden.